Welcome back! As you can see, I've obviously moved so much since our last spiel on projective tests. This time we're talking about objective tests, which I like a little better because they look like they're supposed to for the most part. Not entirely, but I think they're less fuzzy. Okay, so objective tests. Definition. Objective tests are personality, or really any measure that you have, a test that consists of a list of questions to be answered by the subject. These can be yes, no, true, false, or on a numeric scale. The questions at least seem more objective. They can also be short answer, but those require really detailed coding so that you get some consistency in interpretations. So the questions seem more objective and they're less open to interpretation. There are clear boundaries. There's still some subjectivity, and items don't have to be super absolutely objective. They can be interpreted in different ways, and this is a whole area called differential item functioning. Veronica Cole, the other quantitative psychologist, who is fabulous and is the other half of my research mega lab, she does a lot of work with harmonizing items, and this all falls into that. So check her out. But items can be interpreted in different ways. And while this might not be bad, because that interpretation could be informative, I have examples coming up. I swear. Right now. So from the Big Five inventory, for example, there could be a question of what does the italicized thing mean? I see myself as someone who is sophisticated in in art, music, or literature. And this measures openness. What does sophisticated mean? What if does that mean I go to opera? Or does that mean I'm discerning? That I at least have some nuance and don't just watch garbage. Although garbage is lovely. I love garbage shows and TV. And that's why my jokes are terrible. Because they're beautiful garbage. Another one is low levels of extroversion. I see myself as someone who is reserved. What the hell does reserved mean in this context? Chill, laid back, or someone who waits and doesn't act on impulse? Because if it's someone who waits and doesn't act on impulse, that's conscientiousness. Versus someone who's just not a wild party animal. That would be extroversion. So there's some subjectivity. And so because there's that subjectivity, we aggregate. I talked about this last time in the validity chunk about the Spearman-Brown formula and how that can calculate changes in reliability by adding more items. And so what we do is by adding lots of questions together, this kind of cooks out some of the weird subjectivity that might impact the score a little bit and make it a little more messy or less precise. Not for any one item, but on average, by having more of them, each item adds some extra predictive oomph to your test. And so the more items you have, the more oomph. Predictive validity is what I really mean when I say oomph. And so the Spearman-Brown formula allows you to calculate the reliability of test length. So what happens if you double it? What happens if you cut it in half? And that can be really helpful from a pragmatic cost standpoint. Methods of objective tests. So there's multiple ways to make objective tests. Now, I'm not going to go through that for a projective test. The rational method of test construction is you just write the items that seem directly, obviously, or rationally related to what you want to measure. This is the most common form, and often any little quiz you see from an HR department has been made this way, rationally. So it's based on some theory, but it's less systematic. So you could over-focus on some areas, under-focus on other areas. So it's not great, but it's a good place to start. Yeah, so it provides self-report data for the most part, because that's what most people think of. And it's got high face validity, because that's how it was made. It looks like it should match. Any Cosmo quiz, also like this. Not that I've ever written a quiz for Cosmo. But hypothetically. Rational test construction. There are kind of 4 conditions to make a rational test at least decent. And I encourage you to know these, because it's all very likely that you'll have to make rational tests in whatever job you do, or you may want to. So it's not like automatically bad. But you need a lot of stuff to make them okay. So the item, all the questions have to mean the same thing to you, the test maker, as the test taker. So there can't be ambiguity between what you think they mean and what other people think they mean. You have to interpret them the same. So whatever you're trying to measure has to be capable of accurate self-assessment. So things that people tend to be optimistic about, like you have to be able to accurately assess the thing. And like likability, like having to self-report how likable you think you are, it's hard. That's probably more related to narcissism rather than like actual likability. So you have to be able to accurately self-assess. You also have to be willing to make that accurate self-assessment and undistorted report. So some questions, like when you apply for jobs and they give you like weird questions, like, would you steal from the cash register? The obvious answer to this is no. That's what the employer wants. And I mean, obviously you're not going to steal from the cash register, but anyone who says yes to that is like immediately screened out. But just because you say no to that doesn't help you, because like people lie. And lastly, the item has to be valid, a valid indicator of the construct. The item actually has to relate to the construct. It can't just like feel like it should relate. It has to like actually be related. These 4 conditions, again, the item means the same thing to everybody who looks at it and like takes it and grades it and all that. You're capable of having an accurate self-assessment. You're willing to make that accurate in self-assessment. And the items have to actually work. So that's rational testing.